Hey y'all, this is Kelly Janae with Ethereal Ecology. I'm on a mountain and I want to talk about Saturn today. Saturn has been on my mind. Saturn has been on my ass. I am 27 years old and therefore I am edging on to the beginning of my Saturn return. In this period of time beforehand, kind of the preamble to my Saturn return, which I'll get into a little bit because I don't have as fatalistic views about Saturn returns as some people do. I choose to look at life from a non-dualistic perspective as much as possible, remain positive in my intentions. However, I've learned a lot just recently about what Saturn really represents in the human experience. So that's what I want to share with you today. Saturn is a planet that symbolizes the aspect of life that is limitation. This definition is extremely simplistic for Saturn because in astrology, we can look at these archetypal energies, these planets, from so many different perspectives. We can look at them from a psychological perspective, which I tend to do, and from an evolutionary perspective, which I tend to do. We can also choose to look at planets from the standpoint of the physical body and health. And Saturn certainly does have an impact on that for people. It can, for sure. They can have a symbolic significance for us that as humans who utilize symbols more than perhaps some people really realize, this can have a lot of meaning and be supportive in our journeys. And we can also look at Saturn from a traditional perspective, where Saturn was seen as the greater malefic in terms of creating obstacles, challenges, pain in our lives. And I would say that that is still true of Saturn. I've chosen to be consciously engaged with Saturn through this period of time that he's made himself more apparent in my life. I will refer to Saturn as a he. This is not to anthropomorphize him. It's simply to create a definition or a pronoun that helps me feel more connected to this energy. And you could call it an it. You don't need to have a personal, spiritual relationship per se with the planets. I choose to because, magic is real. I've known that, but now it's getting real. And what I mean by that is everything, even the most physical objects, have so many dimensions to them. So many dimensions and that we couldn't even quite understand. And consciousness. So many things have consciousness. I can tune into a flower and realize, oh, this actually has something to tell me in a symbolic form, in a psychological form, in a physical form, in terms of its healing properties or how I feel around it or what it invokes. And so I choose to look at astrology and the planets in the same way, where they are these massive bodies that circulate the same sun that we orbit around. We're all interconnected. And it only makes sense to me from an ethereal ecology perspective that the rotations and the cycles and the relationships between planets would affect me and the greater collective and all individuals in unique ways based on our personalities, our souls, just our physical bodies and where we came into this earth from. So getting back to Saturn, I just want to say that Saturn is really sometimes seen as a bad guy, but I am starting to realize as I'm maturing into adulthood, I'm realizing now why people say once you pass your Saturn return, things are gonna clear up, you're gonna feel more mature, you're gonna feel more real. Life's gonna feel more real. It's a process, it's a rite of passage to go through this 28 to 30 year cycle with Saturn, which basically means that Saturn returns to the same place that it was when we were born. And this process is all about self-individuation. Saturn, I feel, is one of the most important planets in the birth chart. They're all super important, but for some reason, Saturn is the one that's really, some reason. It's because it's almost my Saturn return. That's been the one that's speaking to me the most, because he's teaching me that limitations are a real fact, an objective reality for human beings. And I don't know about you, but sometimes I wish they didn't exist. Sometimes I wish that I didn't need to be in this physical body. Sometimes I wish that I could just have everything I wanted right now. But I think we all know that that's not always the best thing for us. And we wouldn't be able to learn and grow if we didn't have obstacles to stop us, redirect us, teach us. And I've chosen to consciously engage with my evolution. And in so doing, I also have an intention to develop personal relationships with the planets. This basically is playing out in terms of subtle messages and also my understanding of Saturn cycles, my understanding of Saturn's archetypal forces gives me a perspective on my life situation that I don't have to get all fussy and mad and all, why is my career not moving how I want it to? Why are my relationships XYZ? Saturn. I can find peace in that. So a couple of ways that I've noticed Saturn in my life recently is in terms of timing. When Saturn is in a sign, it's typically in a sign for 2.5 years. Because it's in the sign for that long, Saturn is going to go retrograde a few times when it's in that sign. So in this case, I think Saturn has gone retrograde and direct again about, three times, if not 5, in my house of career. And I've realized that this is all about like taking steps forward and then being delayed and trying to make something happen and then it doesn't quite happen. The stars literally are not aligned. And certainly there's other factors at play here because Saturn does not exist in a silo. But I've noticed that there's this actual momentum, this inertia and this momentum that Saturn sort of modulates in life, which is related to my decision making and my actions, where I do have to wait. I don't have the privilege of just being able to move forward with everything. And I see the benefit of that because human beings, I look around me and the world is kind of brutal. There's brutality, there's violence, there's horror in this earth. And all of that is also it's an expression of us inside and our light and our darkness. And that's all it is, really. It's a symbol. It's an externalized symbol so we can see, oh, I am that. How can I work with that? How can I accept the light and the dark within myself and work with it consciously? This to me is a Saturnian kind of viewpoint, and it's an evolutionary viewpoint. It's a teacher of obstacle and the blessing that comes from that, because what comes from being forced in some regards and coerced sometimes, but also just it can be a subtle suggestion if we're consciously aware and working with it to slow down, to stop, to redirect, to rethink, to make boundaries, to be patient. I'm realizing that this is so important and I'm starting to set boundaries and time periods for my goals. I used to never be able to do that. My Saturn's in Pisces. I'm a little bit like, what is a boundary? I don't even think that's a real thing. But in the human world, it is a real thing, or at least it's a concept that we need to work with consciously because it actually comes in handy. So I'm not going to get too much into the personal details of, how this is playing out in my life, but I will say that setting boundaries is a way to work with Saturn consciously. To say, all right, I get it, Saturn. I get it. I can't have everything I want all at once. I may never have what I want, and I may not even know what I want because I'm freaking 27, or I'm 45, or I'm 86, whatever I am a human, so therefore I'm already limited in and ignorant. I'm ignorant. So Saturn's humbling. Saturn is there to hold us back for our own good, because we all know that it's the slow and the steady journey of self-awareness and self-identification that creates the highest potential human being. It doesn't necessarily happen overnight. For some people it does, there's these miraculous things, but for most people it's consistent, steady effort, failure, finally success, mastery through actual sustained effort. I've been putting sustained effort into places in my life for years and years and years, but I realized that, still, I need more patience. I need to wait more. I need to trust more. My Saturn return is it's going to be all about that. Saturn's in Aquarius right now. in late Aquarius. My Saturn's in Pisces. So I have not started my Saturn return yet. However, Saturn has gotten close to the Pisces Aquarius cusp at about 28 degrees or so, maybe a little more. If Saturn gets in between 0 and 5 degrees of a house cusp or a zodiac sign cusp, then he can trigger the start, the feeling of that transit that's going to happen over the next 2.5 years, and it will peak around, for me, 12 degrees of Pisces. But it really technically starts when Saturn goes into that house, which will happen in March of 2023. So with this knowledge, I've been able to find peace in the excruciating slowness of some of my manifestations. And to me, that's extremely valuable, because otherwise I may just be trudging through life, feeling like a victim, being angry at everything. Why is this not working? Putting so much energy into things that just are not ready to even germinate. So to me, that's a blessing. And I thank Saturn. I'm very grateful for Saturn. I honor Saturn. I love Saturn, and I desire to make talismans and put art on my wall to honor, this God, this being. And I also desire to channel this being and speak to him. And I know that that's possible because I spoke to Pluto recently, and that was cool. What else can I say about this very interesting planet? I can't emphasize enough that Saturn's not a bully for no reason. Saturn's not even a bully. Saturn's just kind of like this force that keeps us from having everything we want all at once, because that's not how it works here on Earth. It's just not how it works. We're a pretty low frequency planet, and we're also very, I guess, maybe new in the evolutionary cycle, though some beings say that we're pretty advanced. Saturn's giving me solace that I'm not doing anything wrong, that I'm actually doing the human thing right, if there is even such a thing. Also, it's making things just more real for me. Just more real. Like the realities of life. Like, yeah, disaster can happen. Crisis can happen. I mean, there's bad things, bad, scary things, dangers. And this is important to understand as a person going into the world, is that it's not safe out there all the time, everywhere. There's safety, and there's peace, but there's also, this awareness that I'm developing of, all right, I need to get my ducks in a row. I got to take care of my finances. I mean, I do that enough, but, I got to take care of my life and get some insurance. These basic things that seem so boring to a younger person who doesn't think about it. But this is the value of Saturn, and it's like he's dropping these hints in my mind, hey, do this. I'm like, hey, take care of that, because you never know if this... And it's not an overly obsessive fear, like an OCD, but it's rather just a caution. And I'm loving that. And I'm also rebelling against it a little bit, but I'm going with it. And I'm appreciative. So there you have it. That's my Saturn ramble. Yeah, more astrology rambling to be had for me. Maybe even more astrology teaching and something that's a little less random. But for now, this is the way that I'm communicating this information. Blah. I love astrology. Okay. I love all of you. Peace and love to you. Be well, my dearest ones. Yeah.